So yeah, Your Great Name. I had no idea that the song would do really what it did. I knew it was special on conception. Todd, what he did is he sent me this voice note. He has a good habit of sending voice notes of his songs, and so he sent me the song. He's like, "We love to call you," and I'm just like, right away that melody just stuck with me, and right then I knew like this song was a smash. But what he sent me was a verse and chorus, in a memo file, and I'm like, okay. He's like, man, Jamel, I don't know where to go. I don't want to go next. I'm like, okay, easy. You established a super dope melody in the verse and super dope chorus, and I'm just like, okay, it's easy really to build a song when the song conceptually, kind of has this idea and identity. So it was easy. He was like, man, help me out. What can I do from this point? So I just said, man, bro, I need to go up. We need to find a way to make this a chant, an anthem. So I took the file, and I dumped it in my session. So I started developing what he already conceptually written. And I was like, okay, how can I marry these two? So I started at the bridge. There was power. I started right there. That's where I started conceptually, developing the song from that point. So I went from there, big one, you know what I'm saying? Like make it open, make it feel like, okay, something is about to happen right now. So that was like my whole thing, taking it from the last chorus. Okay, what's next? A big one says, okay, something is about to happen. I don't really know what, but that one is probably staple for, our churches right now because it really speaks a language and it sets something up in your songs and in your services. Everybody going to the one, so we did that, man. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of break down, conceptually, what I heard because he talked about real big drums, so I'm like, okay, toms. So I'm like, toms, okay, cool. So how can I do that? How can I make toms just from a regular kit feel bigger? So I'm gonna open up my session and I'm kind of lay out, kind of how I felt I needed to, describe this song and really kind of help paint the picture. So, all right, so I am a big drum head. Like I love drums. Like I think every keyboard player started on drums, so I'm nothing special. But I just feel like drums is the beef, is the movement of every record. And this particular song, it was about drums, really. It was about rhythm, and it was about this warfare worship is what I call it. Pressing in and making people feel like, okay, something is about to happen, like I said earlier. So I'm not a heavy loop dude, so I'm gonna pull up my loops here. Before I go to this, I want to kind of talk about just my loop right here. It's a simple loop. I'll let you check it out. All I got going is a shaker, tambourine, and then there's this low frequency. It's like a low kick frequency that's underneath. I'll kind of show you where I got that, but it's just simple because I'm not really a loop guy. It really gets in the way, but I'm this type of guy that's gonna add little things like that. So that chain shake right there, it kind of adds to the downbeat of of the loop. It just kind of adds. I know there's a tambourine in the loop, but this chain shake kind of helps it feel a little something more. You know what I mean? So now I'm gonna add that back in there. Adds to the one right there. Okay. So another thing I'm big on is kind of accenting cymbal swells. Like you'll hear this on a lot of my records. Like this specific cymbal swell that I use a lot. Maybe I shouldn't use it so much, but I'm a fan of it because it really marries the transitions together. So it's not just like an abrupt, okay, transition to the next downbeat. I like it to feel like something is happening there. So this right here, this loop cymbal swell, mind you, all my loops I label loop because you always have to think about who's gonna touch your record after you, and you want to make sure that they understand what you're trying to say. So if you just label it loop, you can keep your sub name, but you categorize your stuff like that. So keep that in mind. Your engineer would love you for it. But this loop cymbal swell right here, that's to my downbeat, because I need to feel again a transition that makes the 4 and the 1 marry. 2, ready. It marries instead of 2, ready, and nothing happens. It's small things like that. It's like production to me is it's a conglomerate. It's a mashup of a bunch of small good decisions. It's not this one thing that you do and it's a great production. It's all the time consuming things that most people don't want to do, you have to do, because they at the end of the day they make a difference. Like here again, here's another little element that helps me bring out. It just brings something out of the mix. 2, ready. And that's like a loop knock. So it's frequency. The frequency is out of the way of the cymbal, that change shake, and it's out of the way of the snare. So it has its own frequency. You can even look up, like you can stock EQ. A lot of EQs do this, but you can pull it up and look at what a frequency. Your snare is going to be around 200. Of course, your cymbals are going to be after probably 5K. So that loop knock has a space of its own. So you always want to pick instruments that frequency has its own frequency in the mix. Like, don't just pick it because I like that. I hear all the time people just use a snap. But the point in using a snap is that it has its own frequency and it stands out in the mix. So you don't have to fight. That snap should not have to fight with any other thing. You know what I mean? So pick your instruments according to frequency, not just because you like it. Okay, so I keep moving with my loop, and this is all stuff I'm building in my loop. So back here, because we wanted it to feel like, okay, for the non-musical people that don't know how to clap, that picks the 1 and the 3 to clap on. Okay, it's okay to clap on the 1 and the 3, but it's okay to clap on 4 on the floor as well. So I wanted to let them know that it was okay to do that. So I added claps on the downbeat. So I'm a big claps loop type guy. If you listen to a lot of my music, I will have claps, but I'm not just going to leave them naked like that. I don't like the sim reverb printed on my stuff because you want to let the engineer do that, but you want to give them a reference. So I'll go to just a stock, and throw a reverb just to give it some impulse response. Just give it a little room. Because you want to marry, because this was a live recording, you want to marry the room. So you want to emulate those claps like they are actually in the room, and these are people actually doing it, even though it's sampled. Reverb does that. But just be careful with reverb. Because you can get a lot of buildup and it will kind of like saturate and muddy up your mix. So yeah, be careful with your reverb. But yeah, that's called impulse response, and it makes it feel wider, give us a sense of room. That's what you want to use it for. Also, stomps. So I'll let you kind of hear those by themselves too. These are special because it helps that low frequency to your music. I had a buddy of mine tell me one time, my kick, I don't know if I can say this, but he told me one time, he said, man, your kick has no booty. And I'm like, oh, I felt bad because I'm like thinking my kick sounded good, but it had nothing, no ump to it, and it's little things you can do. Like what I like to do is layer my kick drum. So I'll layer it, and I'll get to that when I get to my drums, but I'll layer my kick drum sometimes 3 to 4 times just to add to the frequencies that the kick is giving you. Because sometimes that kick alone is just not enough to it. In this case, stomps add this depth to it, and it just makes you feel like people are stomping. Again, add a reverb to it if you want to. Here's where I get a lot of my drums from. Like I'm a fan in style. I'm a fan of stylists. I'm a big fan of stylists. All their stuff is great to me. But this is where it is if you want to look for something like that. It'll be in your hard edge and slams. So if you go under there, it's about like maybe the one C1 range where you'll get those low, but you just got to go through the preset and find those. But because they're printed now, they're printed to audio. But normally, of course, it would be MIDI, but that's where those are. And every song is not gonna need that. This song did. The last thing I got in my loop right here. I really don't know why I put that in there, but it did something. It did something to me because it's there. You know, what I like to do is I overdo everything and then I go back and pull out what's needed. So this loop had probably another 10 tracks to it that I came back later and said, okay, I don't need that. Let me just mute that. You know, I mean, it's better to have too much than not enough. So speaking of drums, like that, you know, the toms were pretty crucial to this song. So as you can hear, the drummer, which I'm gonna play those stems, the drummer is do 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 do, but sometimes those toms are just not enough. You know, most times they're not enough for my taste. So I came back and I added these here. So those are on top of the actual drummer playing that same groove. The drummer would be like, man, I'm doing it. You know, you don't need to do that. But yeah, I get it. You doing a part, but I'm complimenting you, you know, and that's the point in production. Yeah, there's the part doing that, but I'm accenting you. So it's a little offset, you know, because it makes it feel like it's a big, you know, band on stage with a bunch of toms and we all playing it together. So you hearing the drummer do it, but then you also feel those doing it, you know? So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play like the live drums without my loop. This is just drums. I think I'm at the vamp of this song or whatever. You hear that? That's what he playing. We're at the chorus. So that's what he's doing, right? Now when I add that loop in there, listen to how bigger and wider it gets. You know, without all the mixing, it's not mixed or anything like that. But without all the impulse responses, that's gonna make it merry. This is what you got. So it's just moving. It's like, and really it takes a lot of finesse. Like what I like to do with my loops, I'll do a small loop, but then I'll go back and I'll play by hand all the way to the end of the song because you kind of want it to be a little loose. You don't want to quantize like everything, you know, in your loops. You want it to be loose. You want it to feel off. That's the live energy. That's the real musicianship you'll get. So although you're playing it on a keyboard, maybe don't quantize it because that's going to give it a sense of, you know, expression. It just feels natural when you get off the grid sometimes. So again, drums on their own. Because just to be honest, I sent this to one of my favorite mix engineers, John Blast, and he sent me my first big mix back, and right away I'm like, it's missing something. And I knew right away I needed to go back and add these. Sorry. I needed to go back and add just these over top of my mix. So I'm going to play that without that. I'm going to keep the loop in there and I'm going to play drums and the loop, but I'm going to mute that tom. And I'm like, it's cool, it was moving. But I said, hey, John, I'm going to send you a file. Can you throw this on top of it? I threw it. And he's like, that's exactly what it needed. Like, because sometimes you don't know what the record needs until you hear it mixed. And that's kind of like why I even started mixing, because I'm like, I needed to hear my frequencies and sonically where things sit. You know what I'm saying? So I think every producer should learn the basic elements of mixing. You might not have the polished ears, some people have, but you at least need to know balance and sonic frequencies that's going to tell you what your record is going to need. So I spent a little time on drums because I'm a drummer. Like, I love drums. So I'm going to move on to, like, even in my drums, I go back to my drums. Like, producers, we have to understand that editing is something you're going to have to love to do. So you're going to have to spend hours on hours editing, because you just don't track the record, and then that's what it is. You got to go through hours of editing. Maybe you got to chop in the sequence. Maybe the drummer pushed the one a little bit. So you could take all the drums. So you don't take the toms if you feel they're rushed. You take every drum track that you have in that multi-track drum, and you move them all together, because then you'll run into phase issues if you just move toms alone, or because they're still going to bleed through your overheads. So take the whole drum pass and nudge it. Just nudge it back if they move. I try not to quantize the drums at all, but I'll go through my whole kit and I'll just nudge, and I'll take things back, just because naturally, yeah, you're going to push the beat a little, and that's fine. But in the record, that real sonically, like, you can hear that if a drummer is too far past the grid. My opinion, I tell drummers, I was like, I'd rather you be behind the beat than in front of it, because you're more noticeable in front of it than you are behind it, because you can easily catch up versus slow down. Slow down is sonically, like, audible, it's audible. So you don't ever want the drummer to slow down. You'll rather him, slightly speed up. So yeah, just take it back just a little bit and just nudge it, but make sure you're doing it. And also another thing we have to do is these toms. So I'm gonna play a tom right here. This is tom floor, my floor tom. You get natural bleed when you're recording like live drums. You're gonna get bleed from the kit, of course, but then if it's a live recording, you got room bleed. So you'll hear the crowd sometimes through some of these mics. So in order for your engineer to get some definition, you got to clean them up. And that's your job as a producer, to take these toms. Something as simple as this, take this tom. What I do is before I even track, I try, if I can remember, is to create a sample library. So I would just have the drummer before pre-session record all of his drums and give me a sample library. That way I'll hand that to my engineer just in case he wants to trigger or just kind of add layers of the actual drum, because they'll have no bleed, so you'll get a little more definition. But in the event you don't do that, this is where your work come in. So you take the tom and you go here, you go to the top of it, just kind of open it up a little bit, and then I throw a light fade in front of it, just a light, because you're gonna hear this right here. You're gonna hear that, and that creates a rhythm sometimes, and it could be off. So you kind of want to like fade in there right before that transient. So you want to get in there real good, so you're not hearing nothing prior to the one, just to make sure that that's clean. You want to do this for your engineer, because if you want sonically a good record, you want to help him. That's your job as a producer. You want to make sure that he's getting clean files. So I'll take the end of that transient and I'll just throw a light fade on it, because what he's going to do is going to add some impulse response to it to make it breathe a little more, so it's just not cutting off right there. So when you send them files, you go through every tom hit and clean them up. Spend time. Make sure that you're spending time, because this is your record and you can't get it back. And some of your engineers may not do that, or they're going to charge you a little more to do these drum edits, because most engineers care, they might do it, but that is your job. It's really not the mix engineer's job to clean that up, so I'm kind of like speaking on behalf of engineers as well, but producers, we need to understand engineer language, knowing how to send files. Like I mentioned, as you can see here, my drums are titled drum. So drum kick, that's snare sample that I added. Drum snare, so that's the actual snare. So when I send these files, my engineer's like, oh, these are drums. Good. I'm just gonna, route them wherever I need to go, because my producer cared enough about me understanding what was next. So he labeled my stuff for me, and it goes even deeper than that. So
I'm excited to reveal something game-changing for us and for you as producers and musicians. I want to introduce to you Peculiar Sounds version 2. We've introduced standalone mode, allowing you to use it independently from any DAW. You can now blend up to 2 sounds to create rich and complex textures. We added in 2 brand new effects, the Lo-Fizer and the Mod Filter. The Lo-Fizer gives you instant lo-fi vibes with just a button, while the Mod Filter adds dynamic movement and flow to any sound you apply to. And we also added the innovative new MIDI browser that provides you with hundreds of chord progressions, melodies, and drum loop MIDI files that you can drag straight into your DAW. And as a bonus, V2 now includes Sounds Off the Block expansion for totally free, bringing the total to over 400 patches. So as you can see, Peculiar Sounds V2 is not just an update, it's a revolutionary new plugin. So make sure you check the website right now and you can get your hands on this game-changing plugin.
These are my drums. I'm gonna move on to bass. Simple, bass is kind of straightforward. It's however the feel. But for me, I'm a whole note kind of guy. I'm not a super rhythm bass guy. Like, patterns are important to me, but whole notes, you leave other space for rhythm. So if you got your bass player with so many rhythm notes and so many different rhythm, he's in the way of the rest of your rhythm instruments. So you got guitar rhythm. So your bass should not take up that rhythm space. Your bass should take up the low end sonic bass frequency space. And those are diamonds most times. You're going to hit diamonds. You're going to hold that note out for a bar. You know what I'm saying? There are some instances that you do want to create rhythm, but so it's just all based on your song. So as you can hear, not much. He's doing it. You hear that open note? He's doing a little rhythm, but I can't stop everybody from doing rhythm. But overall, he's not doing a lot of rhythm. These are quarter notes. So really not much to do. You just have to have a bass player that understands the kick drum and the bass, how they marry. Now, if you're a musician, you know how important drum and bass combos are. Like, I'm super huge. If I call a drummer, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna call the bass player that works with him frequently, because they got a certain marriage that just translate, to records. Like, you can just hear it, because that glue is gonna glue everybody together. For some strange reason, I don't know why, drum and bass, they are married to each other. So check it out. I'm like, this new music that I like I'm a heavy, like, okay, go back. Let's go back to early 2000s, even prior to that, but early 2000s. Where did you hear guitars in gospel music? They were so buried in the music. They was just so tucked away. And I'm gonna give shout out to one of my favorite guitar players. His name is Lawrence Jones. He did this record for Kiki Sheard in Chicago. That was the first record that I ever heard guitar so present in a mix. For one, he's so good, he demanded that space. So you could not turn him down, because he was an intricate part of the record. You know what I'm saying? So guitar to me is a part of, like, my style. Like, producers, make sure you are content with who you are, because just because I like guitar, don't mean you have to, or don't mean you should, because that's just your style. So if you like guitar, kill it, be confident in it, and smash whatever you like, because identity really speaks. Like, you have to make sure that you identify yourself separate from the next person. And the only way to do that is by being true to what you love and what's in your heart and what comes out of your heart. And stylistically, if that comes out of you, be true in that. So do it. So again, I'm a guitar guy. I wish I could play guitar, but I can't. Like, I know about 4 chords, and that's just all I know. So the guitar player on this song, I call his name is Anders Nordstrom. Incredible guitar player. He's a great guitar producer as well. I in the box produced every guitar part that I wanted because I'm super intricate. So all these guitar parts you're going to hear right now, I spell those out for him. I made sure that he understand I needed a left and right on rhythm, bass, high end. I need left and right stereo. I need certain things to be, mono. So I laid it out, and he actually recorded this on his own. I don't always trust, guitar players to record on their own, but him, yes, because he can record well. He has good rhythm. He knows how to execute. These things you have to know before you allow somebody to track your music. That's not even just for guitar. That's for any instrument or even vocals. If you have them track in their own space, you have to trust that they're able to record at decent levels and they're not peaking out on your files. They could have played amazing, but the file is peaking at its source. There's nothing you can do if you peak a file at its source. So make sure that you call musicians that understand what recording, the basics of recording, and the basics of recording is not peaking. Okay, so make sure you understand it. So to my guitars, he's a crucial part of this song. So drums and guitar, everything else is kind of like under the table. I got some aux stuff I'm gonna get to, but here's just a little overview of just guitars by themselves in, say, the chorus. And I'm gonna explain it. These are all the parts. See how wide they are? So right there. So I'm gonna stop right there. So what I did at this initial session, I did pre-production. So all of these stuff were done. These guitars were recorded. I had them stemmed out to my Ableton session, and I had them sent out to its own output. So it was like another 4 guitar players on the stage with me. So only work that my guitar players had to do is just in the moment type of things, because all the work was done. Right here, this EG Live, this is everything that he did live. Not because I didn't want him to think about it. Don't think. Just create the moment. Be present in the moment. Don't worry about all the small details, because look, we took care of all that stuff. We got it. It's there, right there with you. It's there. That's your second, fourth guitar player with you. So this is what he's playing live. He's just having fun. And I kept it. But all that over top of his pre-production. So let me break down. I like to hear big wide rhythm on the low end. So these are and what I like to do is I don't put a stereo double on it. I don't do anything like that. I make them record it twice. As you can see right here, they recorded twice. Because it's a little different. This left guitar has a little space right here. And then this one, something's going on where he kind of let it linger. That's how you know this was recorded in 2 different takes. Look at the transients and look at where they start. This one started a little sooner than this one. But these things matter. They gives you that stereo depth when you double it yourself. It's just, even when vocals, I'll get to that as well, but you layer it yourself. You don't trust that plugins can give you that natural width, because they do make them that way, but there's something about doubling the instrument. So spend a little time and make them double. So just on the rhythm alone. You know what I mean? So that's telling you that. You hear that? Right there. That's one right there. You can tell that it's double. Listen to the left. That chucker. The left did a chucker and the right didn't. A light one. But listen to the left one. You can hear the difference. And that makes a big difference, whether you believe it or not. You can say to yourself, let me add a double on it, but it's just something about doing it. So think about that. Your rhythm, if you want that big guitar tone, double them up, okay? So I'm going to even move on to some diamonds that I had him do as well. He calls them footballs. I call them diamonds. And all diamonds are just whole notes. So you just let it ring out. You count 4 beats. So a diamond is hit the note, 2, 3, 4. And then let you count out, you count out those beats in that measure, in that bar rather. So these are his football / diamonds. Yeah, just open diamonds. I think that's the bridge right there. Yep. And guess what? Again, doubled. I got a left and a right. It's never enough for me, my taste. One is never enough. Sorry. My track count is a lot. You'll see when I get to my auxiliary stuff that, yeah, it's a bunch of small, simple things, but they matter. So those are some. And then there's some that I kept single, like this here. This is one I needed single. And I call those lines. And what I do with the lines is I have the guitar sing in a certain octave to kind of accent those lines. So anything that I want to make a part, I create a separate guitar line. So I don't allow, you see guitar players, they'll play rhythm at the same time and lines. That's just too much work, that you want to split the difference and you want to be more detailed and intentional. So on a whole different pass, I do lines only. And I go through the whole song, wherever there's lines, wherever there's parts. Yep, that's another one. Here's another one right here that's pretty intricate. And that's something that I actually played on my finger guitar. I use, what do I use? I use a few different things. I like to use real guitar. I use real guitar. I use electricity. That's by Virtue. So I'll pick out tones and everything. And I actually played that part. And he came back and did it the right way, like a real guitar player should. But you want to spell these out. You want to spell it out. If you're the producer, your job is not to allow the band to develop your intention. You know what I'm saying? Your intention should be already developed. So I wish I had my pre-production session where I played the drums, I played the bass, I played the keyboard, guitars, and keys. I did all the parts myself. And what I did is I let them hear it. And now they just made it their own. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you want to do. You want to give them a shell to work with so they can understand what you're trying to say. That's not the job of a musician or even the MD to develop your sonic sound. That's your job, to create the vibe. And it takes you to do that work in pre-production to make sure that they understand and what you're trying to articulate. So it makes a difference, okay? So as you can see, even a lot more guitar. Of course, there's some clean here. Clean going on, some delay pickings. This stuff is a part of rhythm, which I was explaining about having the bass stay out of the way of rhythm. Here comes. These are little stuff. And this is the stuff I get from listening to so much CCM music. Like, those guys are detailed. Like, they dig in and every little small thing matters to them. Like the delay on the rhythm of their delays on their guitars, it's a part. It's just not there. It should have an intention. So if you're doing that it should mean something. So just don't do it because it felt good. You pick things that does something to your record. So say your great name. Say, what is it? Let's turn it up. And if you listen to the final mix, Blast had it in there and he had it really good, and he painted the picture for me. Because a lot of gospel guys, they want to hear everything. Me, I don't have to hear everything. I'd rather feel it and be like, okay, once you mute it out, so check it out. We hear it now. Here it goes. But watch when I take it out. Watch what happens. Like, what happened? Back in. These small things really, that's super small, but it made a difference, to my record, and I felt like it needed. So pay attention and do all the smaller things, all right? I'm good on guitars right here, so I'm going to move to probably one of my favorite parts, which is, one of my second favorite parts, like string. So I had a string, so I used Tyrese Wolf. He's amazing from Memphis. Crazy dope. First of all, producer, musician, but he's an amazing string composer. So check it out. I didn't have him do anything. I didn't tell him what to do because he understood that the record was already there. So when you call people, you call people that knows how to compliment what you're doing. And that's exactly what our relationship has been up until now. I sent them a 2-track. He sent me string back, 1 take. I had him send me the files. I took out a couple parts here and there that I kind of wanted to simmer, but 1 take. And that's just making good calls. Being a producer is about calling on the right people, putting the right people in the room with you. You know what I'm saying? Not just being a super creative musician. That's just a part of your job. It's a huge part, but that's only a part. So we can't forget that relationships and knowing who to call makes a difference in your records. So he didn't waste my time because I sent him the file. He sent it back. I paid him, and we were one and done with that record. That was the first single off the bat, and that's what really started our relationship because he killed it. That was the first song he ever did for me, and he killed it, and so he's done almost all my stuff now, so enough about Tyrese. Okay, so in these strings, like I said, he's super intricate in his parts. So since I laid out the arrangement, he understood what strings actually do. Like, what do they do? I've never asked him what does he use because these are plug-in based, but you will never know that these are plug-in based strings just by listening to them. I'll solo them by themselves. So here's cello by itself. Cello, of course, if you know, cello is low in frequency information. So understand when they do a cello, it's gonna be low in bass sort of information, bass relative type of information. So think about it. How do you mix that in to react with the bass because they're in the same frequency? Yeah, that's John Blass's job. Okay, but you do need it because it kind of helps warm up that low end, So he gave me a cello, and then he also gave me a violin and cymbal. I play a little violin too. I play violin in school, so I kind of understand this language. So do you hear how those strings bend into each other like that? That blew me away, because those were string articulations that a keyboard cannot do. Sorry. You could probably play it that way, but it's the articulations that make it feel like it should feel, So digging into your plugin and knowing how to change the articulation, making it respond, is detailed stuff that we have to stop being lazy and dig in and really learn what the plugin does, learn how it responds, and do what is intended, to make sure you're getting the best out of your plugin. So your plugins is only there to assist you. They're not here to do it for you, and I think people spend a lot of money on buying plugins when fine, that's cool, but you still it has to be something, for the plugin to respond to. So that's just an accompaniment, you know what I'm saying? It's just there to help you and assist you in your tools. But the tool is you, really. The tool is in your heart. The tool is in your mind and in your ears. You just use these tools to make it happen. Okay? Just a little bit. I'm going to go to the vamp where those parts right there. That's the part that really drove the song and what made every genre of Christian music feel like they can connect with it. Like, he just threw a harmony over that. Just genius. Just genius. Okay, so that's just a little bit on the strings. That's something that you want to get out of your hair. You call the right person to get it done. All right. So on to something that I really take pride in is auxiliary stuff. So these are like in former gospel music, you would hear the piano dominant. Like now today, the piano has just gotten pushed down in the mix because there are so many more things to add to the mix that you need to have, so you got to make room. So sometimes that main piano back, and I miss those days, I really do, but certain records require not the piano to not be the forefront, and in my music, piano is not the forefront instrument. It's guitar, that's just my taste. So in my records, most times you're going to hear that piano ducked up under, because you're going to hear auxiliary stuff a little bit sharing that space, but just a little about a dB above where the piano would be. Guitars as well. So they're kind of sharing that focal point. So guitar and auxiliary, instruments is taking up a lot of space. So look at my track count on my auxiliary stuff. Like it just keeps going. So I don't know how many I'm looking at, but this is how I fill up my records. So now every one of these pieces mattered. Like I'm a big fan of this guy right here. If you listen to my records all the way from the anthem, at the first verse, you hear that. I know you do. At the anthem, you hear that. But I picked another one that kind of that took out more of the high frequency stuff. So it was more low end frequency, sonic stuff. But that's in a lot of my records. Why? Because something just happened. And I don't know what happened. I just felt it. Like that boom was like, dang, what happened? Like this track just exploded on me. And nobody knows why it did. This was a part of why the track exploded on you. The next section, it just something happened out of nowhere. But keep in mind, that has to line up with that kick drum. So if that kick drum is right at that bar 12 and I pull up that kick drum, bam, it's right there. Look at the transient. Because if it's off, something's going to be sonically out of place. So you want to think about where that's actually going to be. So by hand is good, but add it, okay? So I'm going to keep going. All the fun stuff, man. This is why I have fun. Tell me you heard that in the record. Tell me you heard it. You probably didn't hear it. But what's helping that line? Because you think it's only guitar, but there's a lot of parts doing that because it's making a tone. So you have all these different instruments that are playing that line. Here's another one. So here's another one. And mind you, I'm picking these because there's a frequency there that I need to even off the frequency scale for me. Like, every one of these has a frequency that it belongs to. And again, I encourage you to pull up your EQ and look at an analyzer and start learning what these frequencies look like. Like, train your ears to hearing a frequency, because I could tell you just by listening to a sound where that frequency lives, where that instrument lives in frequency. Like, you have to start teaching your ears how to hear that, because the best of the best producers don't pick sounds just by the sound. They pick it by the frequency, and that's how you know the next level producer, because they're just not just picking sounds. Like, I think the worst, I'll say the producers that need to grow is the ones that don't know how to pick your instruments. Like, that's a huge part. Like, everything don't belong in your track. These motifs are great, but these sounds are getting exhausted. So you better learn how to tweak that sound and carve out frequencies that belong, carve out ones that don't, throw some delay, make it your own. That's what the next level producer would do. I'm gonna keep going. Did you hear this? Like, who would think to put a tube bell in their stuff? Like, I thought it was the cheesiest thing in the world until I tried it. And I'm like, okay, that lives in a space where my boom right here, these work together. Those said something, like something just happened again. I don't know what, but a tube bell kind of painted that picture. You know what I mean? So it's little things like that. You know, I'm a huge, so I'm just gonna play the aux stems. This is big. It's taking up every frequency there is. Look at my analyzer. Look at all the space that it's taking up. Because if it was only one instrument, it wouldn't grab all of these frequencies. If it was just one choice of aux instruments, it would not get all this frequency range. It's not one instrument that you can pick will cover all of this. Sorry. So that means you got to go back and add other ones that kind of make up the difference. Okay. So take your time and go through these aux. Like little stuff like. You probably would never heard this. I don't know why I put that in there, but it did something. It's moving. You can see the wave file moving left and right. But that's just the patch. What is that doing? I'm playing it. Tell me if you hear it. Can't hear it. Let me turn it up. There we go. So if I do this, I'm gonna turn it down. I'm muted now. It's gone. Now I'm gonna add it. What did it do? And it was a little hot now, you know what I'm saying? But it does something. It's really, I can't express to you enough how important small things matter in your mixes. Okay.
Intro 2, 3, 4. GospelProducers.com.
Coro, 2, 3, 4.
Back to the top. 2, 3, 4.
Repite. 2, 3, 4.
Praise break. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Praise break. 3, 4. Go to church. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Drive it. 3, 4.
Breakdown. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Outro. 2, 3, 4. Chop it. Take it out. Stab the 1, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I'm gonna move on. That's the fun stuff for me because I spend hours on hours doing auxiliary keyboard stuff. Like I spend a lot of time there. So I'm gonna move on to the most important part of the record. And most musicians feel like their piano part and their arrangements are the important part of these records. No, it starts with the song. So first of all, the song has to be conceptually written well. Because what I've learned about myself is if I have to overproduce a song, that means the song from its concept wasn't quite where it needed to be. So what I do is I compensate for that. So I'll kill it on the arrangement. I should not do that. You know what I'm saying? That should not. So you should go back to the drawing board and say, listen, Mr. Songwriter, how can we develop the song to make sure I don't have to do as much on the arrangement side? You know? The arrangements to this song is simple. It really is. It's not hard. The chords are easy. You know, it's all the little things that make the production big. But the most important thing, again, to me is the vocal. So the way I do my vocal is I always make sure that my artist is using less noise floor as possible when recording these albums. So I'm going to make sure he's running an in-ear monitor system with no wedge. If there has to be a wedge, it's going to be very light for just any incident where, say, his ears go out, there's a wedge on the floor. But overall, you want that wedge to be stage volume to be as quiet as you can. That way you can utilize that lead vocal as much as you can. Because when I want to boost up the vocal, you're also boosting up the room. So you got to keep that in mind. So again, like I did with the toms, I'm going to go through and I'm going to, this is his live vocal.
So much about it.
So you see how I clean that up? Right there.
So much about it.
But I made sure I didn't keep off the S's.
So much about it.
Consonants are important. They'd be like, if I would have cut off his S's while I'm trying to clean up that room, it would have sounded like this.
So much about it.
So be careful with those.
So much about it.
Sometimes you want to do things like this. They kind of duck the sibilants.
So much about it.
Okay, so I went through the whole lead vocal take and I cleaned up everything. That's your job as a producer too. Go in and clean up those vocals.
Try this one.
And what you want to keep in mind, when I do my lead vocals, I try to use the same style microphone that was recorded. So this was recorded on one of the Sennheiser wireless mics. So I went in and I got a dynamic mic that was similar. And that mic was probably one of the cheapest mics you can ever buy, which is a SM58. Because it's a dynamic microphone and it worked with the room, you can't hear. This is his post on a whole different take.
Things change when I call you.
Does that sound any different than his lead here?
Try this one.
Try this one, that's live.
Try this one.
Okay? And then the next part that comes in is post-recorded on an SM58.
Try this one. Things change when I call you.
Sounds exactly the same. Exactly. But sometimes you don't need to use a condenser mic when you're doing these overdubs. That's too clean. You need that dynamic texture that the microphone gives you. It gives you this live frequency that you need to have.
Try this one. Things change when I call you.
And then you go through, you sift through the whole song, and when you listen to a vocal that needs, just go in and get that one part. You know, keep the lead as natural and live as you possibly can. Sometimes the artists want to redo all of their stuff, but then sometimes when they do it, it came out too clean and you can hear that it's a punch. So you have, as a producer, you have to make sure that they understand that when they do that overdub, you have to somehow reinvent that space of that night. Yeah, it's fake, but you have to reinvent that because that vocal texture has to match the live because it can't be too pretty. It's going to sound like a punch. So what Todd is really good at is redefining that space. So somehow or another, he has to find that grit in his vocal that matches that lead from that night. You know, so it got to be dirty and it takes a minute to even get there. So getting that lead vocal right is super important. And if you're doing live recording, make sure that you can keep the audience tracks in your room. I think that's important if you're doing a live recording. You know, if it's pointless to take out the live room because you want the audio clean, you know, and I've seen that done where it's supposed to be a live recording and it doesn't feel like it because they took all these audience mics that I have here. These are just audience mics on their own. So you can hear his lead bleeding through there. Okay, so here's the overdub, but it's doing the exact same thing.
See, I'm free with.
Okay. Okay, so listen to that win. you can change like one note. If the frequency goes down, you can change it to where it goes up. That works, but you can't do vice versa. You can't go down a pitch here and the room is going up, because you're gonna hear the difference. But with this, his pitch is higher than it was when he did it live. Okay? Now here's the overdub.
See, I'm free with
That win, you know what I mean? That works because that frequency covers up what he did that night. Okay? So, I mean, these are small things you just got to keep in mind of. One, is to definitely make sure you record on a mic that has consistency of the night. Okay? And however you can record as clean as you can get. Some environments are going to be different. You know, some situations they won't have in-ear monitor situations. So you got to do wedges. So you got to get the artist to understand this is not a concert. So this is a recording. So your wedge can't be as loud as it would at a concert unless you want a clean recording. You know, so your job is to make sure that you're that guy as well. All right, so last but not least is background. So a lot of people ask me, like, what do I do to get the backgrounds so full? First of all, I have two processes. So if I'm with a situation that has a lot of vocals, I'm kind of covered, you know. So what I did with these vocals, I have some Neumann 49s I use on all the vocals, and I use 3 mics, one per section, one per pitch. So sopranos, they all kind of wrapped around one mic, and then altos kind of wrapped around another mic, and tenors, of course, they all wrapped around that mic. And I normally do 4 passes each take. This particular session was 3 singers each section, so I was pretty covered on, because, and I'll explain to you my other process if I have limited voices. There's 2 processes, because for me, I don't like one vocal to stick out. I don't want nobody to be like, oh, I hear blah blah singing soprano. That's just not my style. Like, I don't want you to be able to pick out a voice, because I like a bigger, more dense sound as it becomes to, you know, my vocals. So what I've done is all vocals are wrapped around Neumann 49 and all the sections, and then I did 4 stacks each, and I did it in the same room that they recorded, because the consistency, you know what I'm saying? Room does a lot to the way your records sound. Like, so pick your right room. Sometimes it's okay to record in a big wide open room, you know, because the live record was done in a big open wide room. So those are okay, because they're going to marry at that point. It's going to sound consistent, you know, to the recording. So just, it depends on what you're going for. Then there's other cases where I have 3 vocals. If I'm like limited to 3 vocals, I call vocals that are floaters. And I mean, those vocals can sing every pitch. And what I do is I'll do a couple group passes where they'll sing their own pitches together, do 2 takes each. And then each take, alto, they'll all sing alto together, and they'll do 4 passes of altos together, all singing the same pitch. And then so on. They'll move and they'll do soprano. So that's, in a sense, getting the same treatment that you would give if all the vocals were there in one room. So say you had access to 9 singers. This is kind of giving you that same 9 singer vibe. You know what I'm saying? So it just really depends on the situation that's you know, presented to you. If you don't have a lot of singers, call who you need as floaters, get in there, and in your process of recording vocals has to be detailed and intentional. You know, you just can't take parts and just let them do it. It's going to sound thin. It's going to sound wimpy. It's not going to have any beef to it. So when you hear these vocals, what I did for John is I condensed all 4 takes together, and I sent him 1 stem. So what I did is I panned out all how I like my pans, and I sent him an alto stem. So I didn't send him 4 takes of altos, you know, because that's just too much on the eyes. And plus, I found the balance that I wanted. So I was able to blend 2 tastes, what my alto takes. So I'll send him, of course, this alto stem. Okay, so that's what we got. That's all alto. You can hear the tenors under there because they were all in the same room. That gives it a sense of marriage as well. Like if you do them all at the same room on different mics with different input signals, that kind of helps gives it this warmth and it marries together. Okay, so that's 4 takes, all stem down to 1 take. That's how I treat my engineers. Soprano, same way. Under that, you still hear the tenors and you still have the altos. Why? Because they were all stacked and done. All their stacks was done at the same time. If one person screwed up, okay, get the take again, because one apple spoils the whole tree. So if that one singer screwed it up, then the rest of everybody got to do it over. Okay, that's just and I think a lot of producers don't spend enough time with vocals. I think musicians are the worst at paying attention to vocals. And that's what will help you get to the next level, is you think about the vocals just as much as you think about your instrument. So if you're a drummer producer, I know you're gonna kill the drum production. That's just a given. But sometimes we'll forget that we need to give that same attention to the vocal production as well, because all of these things marry. You have to care about the kick drum as well as the soprano note equally, if not more, because the vocals, this is a vocal project. This is not an instrumental. So sometimes we got to think about, like, I got to give a little more attention to that. So again, sopranos, 4 stacks each, altos and sopranos. And here's tenors. And here's another point I want to make too. Sometimes when singers get into the studio, they get intimidated and they will sing this mezzo forte or even falsetto voice over a live instrumental. Those are weak vocals. So as a producer, keep in mind that you got to make them sing out sometimes, because the natural tendency for singers to get in front of a $1,000 microphone is, if I sing out like I do at church, I'm going to break the mic. You're not going to break the mic. So I need you to sing out and you'll be fine. Don't worry about that part. Let us engineers and producers worry about that. I need you to give the same dynamic as you would give on the stage, because if you give me falsetto voice over big music, you're weak. You're not matching. You're not on the same level. So as you can see, they're singing all the way out. There are some voices in there that are kind of backing up because it's at their peak, but the overall, you feel that dynamic. You hear that call? You hear all of that stuff. That matters sonically. That matters in the mix. So don't let your singers punk out on you, because they can sing. That same singer you bring it to the studio will sing false at the studio, and then you see them at church and they singing out. Tell them, I need that. That's what I need, especially if there are live instruments, there's live music going on. Like, I need that vocal to be piercing. I need that vocal to be out there. So don't let them punk out and give you a falsetto voice over a big record like that. Sometimes you do need the falsetto, but this part of the song, I need a huge vocal. So I'm gonna just talk about that, and then I'll really be done with the vocals. But that's pretty much my process in recording vocals. Editing is one thing. Making sure that they're all lined up, nobody's kind of sticking out. I'll do the same treatment. So I'll make sure they're not lingering. So I think a lot of times we'll let them linger, or start a little later. So I'll take the vocal and I'll cut them off together. That way I can be sure that they stop together. But you just can't leave it that way. You got to take those files and then throw like a little light fade on the back of it. Just a light one. That way you can ensure that they all stop together. Because sometimes a natural singer will have the tendency to do that. You know what I'm saying? And you can hear that in the mix. Small things like that, you will hear, man, that soprano, she held on a little too long. You know what I'm saying? And that's okay. But go in and group those together, chop everybody off at the same point, and then throw a little fade. And it's okay to have a certain consonant just from one section at the end of the phrase. Like, it's okay, because I really try to keep consonants away from a lot of my music, because unless you have good singers and they're detailed and they start and stop and they say their S's and their T's at the same time, If you're not that detailed of a vocal producer, that will be a hot mess. If you can't hear that, when I call like a T, like you'll hear those. If you can't hear that, that's about training your ears how to hear how messy all those takes can get. So in recording, make sure, like, I'm hearing too many T's, y'all. Count them. When I call your wherever you are in the song, make sure those T's are on the beat, because those create rhythms that make your record sloppy. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think people can hear that. Like, why my record don't sound polished like the next one? It's little stuff like them T's are creating rhythms against something, and it's off. And you can't figure out why it's not tight and when it's not clean, because either you got to go edit that or you got to make sure you cutting that clean in the gate. You know what I mean? So detail is the way to go with making great records. Again, making records is not about this one thing that you do that makes the record what it is. It's about all these small little decisions that I was showing you that I did, you know. And sometimes, you know, from a mental, you know, standpoint, like, we got to understand that, okay, I have to step away from personal time, because my commitment to this project is going to take all of my time and my attention. So I have to be okay with the fact that, okay, I can't go out with the homies tonight. You know, I have to pass on family night at the movies, you know, because I committed to an artist and I have to give them this time, you know. You just have to, you know, because if you don't, I've got records that was released that I didn't know this information, and I wish I would have known that back then. But every record you do, you should learn something from that record. Like, you intentionally say, yep, I remember this from the last session I did. I'm not going to make that mistake. Now, you're going to make another one. You know what I'm saying? But, hey, that's why I say every producer, you're not really, you know, pro level yet until you've done the hours. And I say 10,000 hours before of work, hard production work. And I'm not saying that to be, you know, feel like I'm above you or anything, but those hours create, you know, they transfer to knowledge, you know. So the more hours you spend in it, the more knowledge you're getting in those hours. So you're going to have foresight. You're going to see things, you know. So just, you know, again, be detailed at your production, and you'll have a great record, you know.
Y'all, want to thank you for making it to the end of this clip. We appreciate you watching this breakdown. If you want to see more videos like this, please feel free to check out the links right over here. If you want to take your production, mixing, or whatever to the next level, or check out some of the other products that we have, make sure you check the links down in the description and in the comment section of this video. All right, I appreciate you guys. We'll see y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace.